Hello everybody, how you doing? I accidentally quick-clicked the overlay button too early. I was hovering over it. It's fine, we were only 12 seconds away. Hello everybody, welcome to that daily Minecraft stream. How you doing? Welcome to the Minecraft stream. Burp, 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 burp. Hello to Tom Thomas, hello to Jonathan Cadot, hello to Sinister Minister, hello to It's Ethan. How are you all doing today? I hope you are well. I need to get some wool today. That's basically what I need to do. Let me get some iron so I can make some more clippers. I think I got some around. Yeah, I got some blocks here. We're gonna make some clippers. I'm gonna head to, apparently I can make 30 clippers. I don't need that many. Probably time for a new chest, actually. So hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. If you are new here, this is a solo survival series where I build things in Minecraft in survival solo. Let's use the rest of this stone to keep expanding that launch pad, because that's something we're working on at the moment. We are going to get some wool today for our build here, which is a rocket inspired by the TinTin Destination Moon rocket. I'm currently expanding the size of the boosters, because I put the first ones on, and then I built the rocket, and they were a little small, so I've been rebuilding them. I've also got to take out this block here, which I put in slightly the wrong place, because I repositioned it from the outside. I've also been extending the size of the launch pad, so today I'm going to get rid of my stone a little bit by, putting it here, basically. Which I think worked out okay for the most part. We extended this out a little bit. I got... we might have enough smooth stone to do a full loop. Let's see. John says, oh, I have that cover as a poster. I am aware. It's a good cover. I like that one. I prefer... of those two books, I prefer Destination Moon to Explorers on the Moon, which people who are not up on their TinTin may not be aware. So famously, there's a TinTin book called Destination Moon. It is a very popular TinTin book. Probably one of the most popular. But it's a two-part one. There's Destination Moon, there's Explorers on the Moon. The first is a sort of a space program book about them building a space program and going to the moon before the actual moon landing. And then the sequel is the actual trip on the moon. Originally they were together because it used to be serialized in TinTin magazine. And a lot of people like Explorers on the Moon more because they actually go to the moon. I do not think it is as good a book at all as Destination Moon, where they are actually on the moon. So I'm going to have to actually just fill this in here with... we're going to have to go with this layer incomplete and fill that in later when I have some more smooth stone. Because what I want to do is... Oh, I'm going to skip the night here. I want to get rid of... Sinister Minister says, do not Google Red Rocket. No, don't do that. Hello to Lou's Corner, how you doing? What was I saying? Something. I've forgotten. I prefer Destination Moon to Explorers on the Moon. There we go, enjoy that story. I forgot where I was going with it. But yeah, I like those books. I like that era of TinTin a lot, because TinTin, which these days I think most famous for the outside Europe, I guess, for the Steven Spielberg movie, which is a good movie. It's not perfect, I will say, but it is a good movie. It's a good adaptation of Tintin. I think there are some things I don't like about it, but I think mostly it gets the vibe right. I'd say what I don't like about that movie, actually. It's an adaptation, a fairly close adaptation of a book called Secret of the Unicorn. And then they don't really adapt Red Rackham's Treasure, which is a shame. They don't adapt the sequel. But it's not a very... It's sort of an all-over-the-place adaptation, so they combine the book where Tintin meets Captain Haddock with Secret of the Unicorn. And so the end result is it ends up feeling a little sort of squished together. But it's a decent movie. It's a good adaptation. If you were gonna do a big screen adaptation, it's about as good as you would get, I think, and that's good. That's reasonable. But the oh man, this has created an oddly non-circular launch pad. I'm gonna have to basically next time just go around in a line and just fill in the. In fact, let's do that now. If we just fill in this diagonal, if we just extend it out here, I think that will actually go to some length to fixing that. Anyway, I like TinTin, and I like this rocket. And its close cousin, Thunderbird 3 from the Thunderbirds shows. My favorite story, actually, about TinTin and the TinTin rocket and Destination Moon and all that jazz is when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. Hergé is the name of the guy who writes TinTin. He sent Neil Armstrong a picture. And it was a picture of the cast of TinTin on the moon with little captions like "Welcome to the moon, Mr. Armstrong," you know, like a cheeky joke. But TinTin, I don't know how well known it was at that time, but it's not that well known in the US, to my understanding. Before the movie, and particularly before the animated series in the 90s. It doesn't seem to be something that people in the US know that much, certainly before the recent movie. And the animated series, like I say, which was pretty good, but I think that was more of a Canadian thing. Anyway, was Neil Armstrong just bafflingly confused by that? Like, what is this about? What a weird congratulations this is. This French guy has sent me just a picture of some characters on the moon saying, "Welcome to the moon." Wait, was that his reaction? That's what I want to know. Was he just baffled and alarmed and deeply confused? Maybe in the 60s, TinTin was more well-known in the US. I don't know. Because there was another animated series. People may be aware. There was an animated series from the... I think it was in the 60s. It might have been the 50s. Famously, because it used to have this intro that would go, "Hergé's Adventures of TinTin." And it was very of its time. If you guys remember animated series from that time, they don't repeat them as much these days, but lower budget ones, very commonly what they would do is they would have very short episodes, like 5-10 minutes. And this one was pretty well animated, actually, and what it would do would break down... Oh, hey, I've got some polished andesite here. I should remember that when I go back. I didn't know I had that. It would break down a single TinTin story from a book into like 20 5-minute parts, which I would hate that. I always hated shows that did that as a kid. I still hate them now, but apparently it's more common in like France and Europe and places like that. Even today, to have like comedy. Apparently it's very common to have comedy shows in Europe that are like the length of a cartoon that they used to slot between two things when there'd be a gap in the programming, you know? Like, there's this thing with, it came out recently. When I was a kid, Tom and Jerry was always on TV. Right? Tom and Jerry, very, very, very commonly on TV. An absolute staple of British television. Not British, but just always on the BBC. And it came out in recent years that the reason that is someone at the BBC liked Tom and Jerry, obviously, and they'd got a great package deal on it. And what they would do was they would use it every time something unusual created a gap in the schedule. So they had a huge library of Tom and Jerry cartoons of various different lengths. And every time there was a scheduling issue, like a sports program would overrun, so they'd have to like tweak something, or the news would come in, or something would come in short, or something would come in late, or whatever. During the 90s, that was what they would do. They would put Tom and Jerry on. Apparently, there's a lot of comedy in Europe on TV that fits that kind of schedule. The French TV show called Camelot, and it's a short show like that, like a cartoon interlude that basically goes in between awkward fitting programs. And that is really strange to me as a thing, the idea of making a show at an irregular length. The BBC did do a little bit of that, of making their own shows in the 90s. There used to be a show called The Gogs, and The Gogs was I was going to say The Crudes, because it's actually the same concept, a family of cavemen. The Gogs was stop motion animation, claymation. But that was one of those shows where this was the thing the BBC went through a trend of doing in the 90s, where they would commission these animated shows, and then rather than showing all the episodes at a set, like, okay, it's going to be on Fridays at 2, right? It would be, okay, we got the show, and it's going to kind of be on wherever you can find it. There were a few of these. There was The Gogs. Hello to Gamer Boy, how you doing? There was The Gogs, there was Stressed Eric, Rex the Runt, which was a very odd show. Actually, Rex the Runt. Very, very strange TV show. And they would just run like that. They would run kind of oddly scheduled. Okay, very sporadic. Like, yeah, we got one here and we got one there. And I guess they were sort of the same thing. And probably the weirdest thing, I think the thing I remember the most about the Gogs was, and I think this was probably the most interesting thing about the project, not every episode would be suitable for the same sort of target audience. So there would be an episode of the Gogs that was on, 1 in the afternoon when kids could watch it. I remember the first episode of the Gogs. It's about the making of Stonehenge. It's cavemen putting together standing rocks and putting together rocks that look like Stonehenge, and then the mystery is solved in that it's a swing for the baby, right? That's what they've made it as. But then there were some quite raunchy episodes, shall we say? Some more age inappropriate episodes, and they would air at like 1 in the morning, right? I kind of miss that time for TV scheduling. Like, TV in general, I don't miss a lot of TV because TV was pretty bad, but I do often miss one particular element of TV, which is that you didn't always know what you were going to get. You could discover things a bit better than you can today. With streaming services and such a wide library of stuff on demand, I find that it's a little difficult, or comparatively, it's a different experience to find things you didn't explicitly want to watch. You can browse and be like, yeah, do I want to watch this? Do I want to watch that? Hello to Rushi, how you doing? I'm pretty good, thank you, Gamer Boy, I appreciate that. But you don't have the thing, like I have movies that I really like, that I discovered because I taped one movie and left it running, and something else got taped after the thing I was taping, right? That's how I first saw The Fly. I was taping an episode of The Outer Limits. And taped The Fly instead. Famously, my dad wouldn't let me watch The Fly. It's the only movie my dad would not let me watch. If you've been watching it, I had to tape it illicitly by mistake, because it had been on TV a few years earlier, and my dad wouldn't let me watch it, and so I by accident acquired The Fly, and had to watch it like sneakily. If you've watched this channel before and had me talk about Mad Max and stuff, you will know my dad was not one for telling me, no, you cannot watch that. That is not age appropriate, young man. That was not his thing. Quite the opposite. The Fly is the only thing. What's my favorite movie / animation? I don't really know. I don't know if I have one. I really like the film Road to Perdition. I think that's pretty good. That's the one I usually mention these days, even though it's probably not true. It's just my sort of standard answer, because it's a film I happen to like a lot. But yeah, he wouldn't let me watch The Fly, because he'd seen The Fly some years earlier, and found it, disgusting, were his exact words. He'd found it repulsive, which it is. It absolutely is. It didn't really bother me. That was the only time he ever told me I couldn't watch something. Absolutely ever. The only time in all the years I knew him, the only time he ever put his foot down and said, "No, you can't watch this thing. This is as your parent, I refuse." There were plenty of things he wouldn't let me do. It was the only thing he wouldn't let me watch. The Fly, the Cronenberg one. Which I still think is really funny, because I don't find the Cronenberg Fly film that scary. It's got some good special effects. I understand why people would have thought it was repulsive at the time. At this point, we were in the 90s, you know? The weird thing is, my dad could be weirdly selective about stuff like that. He once taped for me, explicitly. He recorded it from the TV because he thought I would like it. A movie called The Company of Wolves. And The Company of Wolves, by the way, is a really good movie. It's a strange, dark fantasy horror movie about wolf stories and Little Red Riding Hood stories and things like that. It's a really odd movie. I think a lot of people would not like it. They would find it too strange. I've always liked it. I think it's a really great film. But there's a scene in that movie where, because it's about characters telling fairy stories, and a girl who's having dreams about, the framing narrative is there's this girl and she's having nightmares about fairy stories involving wolves. One of these stories has this guy, like a fairy tale, it's about this woman's husband who goes missing, and then later on, she is reunited with him. He appears in the middle of the night. And there's this grotesque scene where he tears his skin off. He's turned into a werewolf, and he tears his skin off to reveal a wolf underneath. And it's a good movie. It's a horrible scene, and it's supposed to be a scary, horrifying film. But that one scene, the special effects in it are pretty good, and I would say it's about, if you found that shocking and repulsive, you would find The Fly shocking and repulsive, right? The scenes are, The Fly is much more prolonged, but they're of a similarity. They're horror scenes involving special effect gore. We're just collecting a load of wool here for our build, by the way. We'll be getting to it soon. I'm just getting as much wool as I can before I proceed. I probably don't need so much for this one, but I don't want to run out, so best to make sure. We are going to need some wool eventually. I'm replacing an existing piece, but the more wool we have, the more we'll be able to do without having to come back. But yeah, so he had no issue taping this movie just for me to watch, but he wouldn't let me watch The Fly. Weirdly enough, I remember, because I was a big fan of that show, I actually remember the exact episode of The Outer Limits it was taped after, which is odd, I guess. The Outer Limits, for people who do not know, this one was an anthology show, a sort of anthology sci-fi horror show that each episode would be different. Think The Twilight Zone, but this was the 90s reboot, which was pretty good. And that episode of The Outer Limits, Gamer Boy says, well, after hearing you, I think I need to watch more Hollywood movies. Yeah, if you like them. That episode of The Outer Limits was about a spaceship that starts heading towards Earth, and the president in a bunker trying to communicate with the spaceship and unable to communicate, and convinced that they're going to attack because they're sort of firing a beam into the world's oceans. And it was pretty good. I remember it. Hello to Vivitator Universe, who says, just joined, what you doing? We're just getting a load of wool before we kick in with the next build. And yeah, that's about it. Talking about movies. Trying to remember what movies, like, whenever I talk about horror movies, I'm trying to think of ones that really, like, frightened me, made me uncomfortable. Ones I really don't like. I find The Descent quite creepy. That's probably the horror movie that came the closest to really, really scaring me. But it's weird. I've watched a lot of horror movies as a kid, and I was always more scared of being scared by them than actually scared by them. I finally watched the Ring movies a little bit ago. Not very recently, but like maybe 2 years ago. I saw they were all on Netflix, and I got fascinated by the idea of watching all the Ring movies, because I'd heard so much about the Ring. The American ones, not the... I don't remember, are they Japanese or are they Korean, the Ring movies? I don't remember. But whatever original country of origin they're from, I didn't watch the original ones, I watched the remakes. And, man, those movies suck, right? I couldn't believe that. I remember when I was in school, people saying The Ring was just the scariest, most original, impressive, frightening horror that has ever been, ever reached the shores of the US. Hello to Blitzy, how you doing? And that the American ones were scary, and then the originals ones were scary. I watched the first Ring movie, and it was terrible. Genuinely terrible. I could not believe that was the film people had been fawning over for so long. Particularly when, like, Brian Cox gets introduced, and the movie takes this odd twist that is bad. Anyway, bad movie, did not like The Ring at all. And then I watched The Ring 2, because I thought, well, I've watched the first one now, I might as well take a dive and watch The Ring 2. Really go for it. And then I actually liked The Ring 2, which has a reputation for being like a really bad, meaningless sequel. But I thought The Ring 2 was actually quite interesting. The Ring 2 was actually about something in the way the first one wasn't. I didn't find the first one very frightening. That didn't help. And the second one, I thought, was a lot more interesting, which in turn made it more frightening, because I could get invested in it a little bit more. And I liked that, and enough. So I was like, alright, well, I guess I can watch the third one, which goes down the aliens route. John says, it's because you're a contrarian. Have you seen those movies? Have you actually seen those movies? The Ring 1 is terrible. The Ring 2 is at least interesting. I stand by. I don't think that's contrarian. I think that's self-evident in the movie. So I was like, well, I can watch the third one then. Let's do it. I'll give it a go. The third one is the worst one. It is so bad. But I will say this for the third one. The third one does at least have an interesting premise. It's very badly executed, but the third one is at least fascinating. For people who don't know the premise of The Ring, it goes like this. What was the one with the telephone call? Says Farrell Kingybird. I don't know. A Stranger Calls, perhaps? There is one that's also called The Call, but I don't know if I've seen that one. So the premise of The Ring, if you've never seen it, is there is I'd say what it is. It's a case of, it's got an interesting horror movie premise, and then as the movie goes on, they start explaining that premise in the most dumb, stupid, boring, not interesting way in the world. But the premise of The Ring is actually pretty good. There is a videotape, and if you watch it, it's got all this weird imagery on it. And then, once you've watched it, you will die. You'll be killed by something within, 7 days? Something like that. Where it starts a timer on your life, basically. Anyone who watches the tape dies. And it's an interesting premise because what works about it is, it's got this, It's got this kind of schoolboy this schoolboy kind of logic, this kind of Bloody Mary thing. Say a thing 3 times in the... sorry, I'm a little sidetracked by a message that came in. I apologize. It's got this kind of schoolyard logic to it. John says, it's the first one. After a person watched the video, they get a call. Oh, the Ring... Yeah, okay, so the Ring movies, they do phone, yes. Once you watch the tape, things phone you and tell you your countdown and stuff like that. I think that appears in all of them, the phoning you. Sorry, a little message came in as I was streaming there, and I managed to get myself completely sidetracked. So the premise of the Ring movie is interesting in that it's got this kind of schoolyard logic to it. That is interesting for sort of a basic horror movie. There's a certain type of horror movie that never goes much further than that with it, right? Like, you do a thing, the horror series of action begins, you try and get away from it, that's it. Like Final Destination. But The Ring's not really like that. That initial premise is interesting, and the horrible things that kill you are then interesting, and it's got that kind of, horror from Asian countries likes that contorted face effect. It's a trend over there. So it's got all that, and that's kind of creepy. But then, as the movie goes, this is my problem with The Ring as a movie. And maybe it works better in the original Japanese film. I don't know. But the big problem with The Ring as a movie is that it doesn't stick to this concept and just try and make a scary film with it. It starts getting into this sort of origin story about why the tape was made and where it came from. And then the solution to that origin story is so uninteresting and crap that it takes down the whole film. So it turns out there is a child born with psychic powers who was horribly tormented by her family and sent to a hospital and lives on this farm. And it's not even that long ago, to be fair. That's the weird thing about it. It feels like it should be... The video on this tape feels like it should be some ancient curse somehow manifested on video, but it's not. It's quite recent. Weirdly, that's an oddity about that movie. And in general, it just doesn't really work out. That whole plot is terrible. That's why I like the second one a lot more. Sorry, it's why I like the second one a lot more, because the second one doesn't really as much deal with that. The second one is much more about... the second one has this really fascinating concept, which is the main character from the first movie, her son starts to drown while not in any water. And it's this odd following curse. The actual tape is much less important in that movie, and I think it's... The second one feels more to me like what they wanted the first one to be, actually. But the third one, I think, is actually a really interesting premise. Not a good movie, it doesn't really work that well, but the premise is really fascinating, which is... The third one's quite recent. It came along... I mean, I say recent, it could be like 2013, but it wasn't made soon after the original. It's quite a bit later. And the premise is quite interesting. There is a snobby film lecturer who goes sort of hipster and buys a VCR player at a garage sale. And because we're in the age of DVD at this point, right? Could not get away from it by the time this movie was made. And finds the tape inside and watches it. And then, to get out of the fact that he's cursed himself, because the way you get out of being killed with the tape, the solution they find, is you have to make a copy of the tape and make someone else watch it. That's how you get away from it. But there's a trick to it, which is once you make a copy of the tape and make someone else watch it, they have to then make someone else watch it, and so on and so forth. It's complicated. So the snobby film tutor, film lecturer, who has watched this film and now knows he's decided he's gonna die, comes up with this solution, which is he makes a club of other snobby film students whose whole thing is watching the movie over and over and over again and sending each other round in cycles. And so they watch it. They have a buddy whose job is to watch it for you. But it's like a pyramid scheme. They have to keep bringing new people into the club. And keep cycling the tape around. And it's a really fascinating premise that just doesn't work that well. Farrell says, she said garage correctly. I did. I tend to pronounce American words correctly when using them. I tend to use American English pronunciations when using them in that context. So in Britain, we don't have garage sales, therefore there is no equivalent garage sale. Although, to be fair, some people in Britain say garage. It's a regional thing. Let's see. Farrell says, Ju-on was scary for me. I didn't find that one scary, I'm afraid. The truth is, I'm very, I don't want to say selective, because it's not a deliberate thing. It's very particular what I find scary and what I don't. I found the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre very scary. I don't find any of the remakes frightening at all. I found the first Saw movie scary. I don't find the remakes scary. I don't want to be that guy who's like, well, I like horror movies, but they have to have a good plot, because that guy's lame. But the truth is, it is sort of true that I have to at least be invested in the characters to get any fear out of it. If it's just mindless, it actually, it spares me being frightened, because I'm just not invested. I'm usually just too bored. So it has to have something to hook me conceptually, I think. Or emotionally, I should say. Actually, no, I think that's fine. Okay, that works. Farrell says, I think John was the first subtext movie I watched, so it was like watching a book. So when the scary parts came up, it really scared me. Oh, with subtitles! Well, that makes sense. Let's go look to the side. Sorry, I'm doing a big inhale before I work there. So it needs to be thicker. All needs to be taller, but I want to get the angle of that curve right too. Okay, let's smooth that edge out there. And then just make it taller. Farrell says, then when the American version came up, it wasn't so scary. Yeah, I didn't find that one frightening. A lot of people used to talk about that movie when I was a kid because it had Sarah Michelle Gellar in, who at the time was a big star. And it was one of the first things I think she'd done after Buffy. Hello to King FJS, who says, what are you building? A rocket. Okay. It was one of the first things she'd done after Buffy, I think. There was that. There was Cruel Intentions. And there was the Scooby-Doo movie. And they were all, I won't say the same time, but they were all the same era. And that was one of the ones that I think did well on the back of that. And yeah, not a good movie. I sometimes wonder if casting Sarah Michelle Gellar in that one ended up being detrimental to them, in a sense, because it limited what they could do in the movie, how serious a horror movie that could be, I guess. Okay, let's get a little distance from that and see how that one booster looks. Okay, no, I think that's better. I think that one is better. So maybe we need to change the supports. Yeah, okay, so I think that support needs changing, but let's just let's just put the other booster in. Let's get these up to the size they need to be. So this is 2, 2, 2, 2. And 2 blocks from the edge as well. Okay. I'm so engrossed in this, I'm completely forgetting we're getting close to night. Also, I'm trying to kill a guy with a shovel. You know, classic Minecraft stuff. Right, so this is the big one. Okay, no thank you. None of you. Huh. This looks like this is going to be further apart. No, do you know what it's... I don't think it is going to be. Yeah, this is weird. I don't remember the other one clashing with the pre-existing thing, but we're gonna have to work with this. This shouldn't be too difficult, I think. So we're just trying to expand this out here because these original boosters were too small. I'm gonna build the 3 boosters first, and I think what I'm gonna do is take the support that I built over there, either out or as a model. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's the support. We can get rid of that. We'll trash what's left of the other one soon. I'll see you later, Vividsator. Thanks for watching. John says, can I just say, having to do peer evaluations for class is a nightmare. I would hate that. I once got a job offer, I would say. I say job. Job offer. This is a completely misway to phrase this, because it wasn't a job. It was an unpaid writing gig for a games review website. It was when I was in my first year of doing this, and before I'd started making proper money for it, and I wanted to try to leverage this back into trying to do games journalism, which is something I'd always wanted to do, and it felt like a good idea. I was like, that'd be a good way of breaking into... So anyway, I applied for a writing job on a games writing website, and one of the and it was unpaid, and I know they say never do unpaid work, but I was like, I'd be willing to do that for the time being, because I thought, why not, right? I wanted to improve my writing, I wanted practice, I wanted all this sort of stuff. And I actually got it. I got it. And I was really surprised. I didn't think I would. And I was really excited. And then the guy starts explaining it to me. Well, I say I got it. He offered me it. Wait, I guess that's the same as having got it. I never took the job up. I was never officially working for them. Because he starts explaining to me how it works and what would be expected and stuff like that. And then it becomes clear that they don't have an editor on this website, strictly speaking. They do, kind of, but they also don't. What they do is they have a system where everybody submits their work to an online system, and then as well as... So it was completely unpaid, which I was willing to do to get some stuff on my thing at that time. But you were also expected to basically proofread and edit and make suggestions to everybody else's work as part of the process. And I immediately knew I didn't want to do that. This might be more common than it seems. This might be something that is more frequent than I had expected. But I did not want to do that. So I turned the job down. I said, look, the reason I applied for this job is I want to work with an editor, right? I want to know what it's like to submit work, to get feedback, and to have a to work within that process and to use it to get experience doing this job. I don't want to be an unpaid editor myself and have my work constantly evaluated by what is no doubt a highly competitive, because there were paid positions up there, but you had to earn them through time. I don't want to be part of a highly competitive. I don't want to evaluate that. I don't want to have all my work evaluated by a clique of unpaid editors either. And so I said, no, I'm not going to do that. John says, that sounds horrible. Yeah, it was. The entire concept was terrible. So everything you submitted to the site went to a holding position first. That's not that uncommon, I think, with outlets, right? It depends on how close your editors are. Some places have editors who don't look over anything you do before you post it. Some places, right? But this, it went to a place that anybody could communally see and contribute on all the work first, and it was so 100% not what I was looking for. And a few things immediately struck me about it. The first was you wouldn't learn anything because you weren't being directly overseen by somebody with experience. So if you wanted to have a learning process, it wouldn't work. And the second thing was you would immediately create bad blood. If people knew who was editing and whose work and who was editing feedback, I knew what that was going to be like to work. Like that was going to be poison for any kind of positive relationship with the people you worked with too, I felt. Because you can have a relationship like that with an editor, because that's their job as an editor. But when it's supposed to be one of your peers, oh yeah, it sounded atrocious to me. So I immediately bowed out. I was like, nah, not going to do that. Because it was clear, like, they were a small outlet. I didn't mind working unpaid. Like, I know that they say never do it, but I personally think that there is a portfolio exception to that. If you get credits, if you get to put work and say, look, I did this and it's out there and somebody approved it. But when a website doesn't have an editor, you can't even say that, right? You can't even have somebody say, oh, hey, yeah, I did this. Yeah, that's the only journalism job I ever applied for and got. And I immediately was like, I can't do that. I would hate that. Because what they were really doing was trying to avoid having to pay editors as well, right? Having to pay editors who knew what they were doing. They were just trying to crowdsource proofreading, basically. Which I realize that's not exactly the same thing as a class evaluation, but that's the haunting memory it brought back for me. The idea of having to work with people who you are also constantly grading their work. Horrifying. Part of me still wonders if maybe I should have done it. You know? As much as I would have hated that. I could have gone into the whole game journalism thing. But then, like, looking at that now and how toxic that is. John says, the only reason I think someone should do unpaid work is if they're already being paid somewhere else for that kind of work. Yeah, like a pro bono situation where it's completely voluntary. I don't know. I think, I think there is an actual case for it. People are very, very dismissive of it. And I think there are some very valid criticisms, like it makes some jobs off limits so that only people who can afford time working unpaid can do them. And I do think that's true. And I think that's a valid criticism. I don't necessarily think there should be a deal breaker for certain types of jobs, though. I think jobs where the primary method of... I guess what I mean is, I don't think that's the same as you should never do them. Oh, so this is interesting. How did that end up closing the top there? I've made these exactly the same proportion, but I'm not ready to close the top. That's the question. So I don't think people... so this is a weird situation to put it. I don't think you should ever offer unpaid positions. I don't think it's always wrong to take them, is maybe a better way of putting it. No, I'll tell you what I'll put it. I'll tell you how I'll put it. There is sometimes value other than money in a work position, and I think there are work positions that you can take under that arrangement. And I'm not talking about the for exposure. I'm talking about specific portfolio tasks or specific experience that you need to advance, but is in itself not usually highly valuable. So, if you need a kind of experience under your belt to progress that you don't have. Oh no, that's why. It's because it's not ready yet. It's because I haven't done an extra layer yet. If you need a kind of task under your belt that you don't have, and you need it to progress, and yeah, that's why. It's because I'm trying to finish this layer too quickly. I don't have the layer too high. And I think some creative jobs can be like that. Like portfolio building, like stuff like that. I don't know. I guess to me, it's one area where I differ from a lot of the rhetoric online. A lot of my progressive friends. I don't think all unpaid work is inherently bad. That is a point I will make. I think there is value to be obtained in certain types of it. What I would say is, for jobs that, in my opinion, I guess this is another area where I mildly differ from my friends. I think there are some jobs that are a pleasure to do. Like this job. I'm doing one right now, right? Now, I'm my own employer here, so I can work for a miserable wage because I choose to do it. But I actually really don't like when YouTubers or certain types of content creators online get overly... what's the right way of putting it? I don't like it when people talk about YouTubing. I've heard people use phrases like YouTubers Union, things like that. And I actually don't see my job like that. And I don't necessarily support a lot of the aims of people who do. And my reason for this is, quite simply, there are certain types of jobs where the main goal is to be creative. Now, don't get me wrong, I think artists deserve to be compensated for their art, and content creators deserve to be compensated for their work. If people want it, if people want to hire it. But when you set yourself up as a self-employed artist, right? A self-employed content creator, like a YouTuber, like a podcast host, like something like that. I think you don't get to make claims like that anymore. Because this is not a case of someone hiring you or someone expecting work of you. This is an expectation you've placed on yourself, right? Similarly, I think that applies to certain jobs in which, not in its entirety, but certain jobs, and I would definitely put things like video game journalism in them, where they are, in a sense, creative jobs about creative fields of, with all the respect in the world, low importance. And I think there's a perspective of looking at that I don't necessarily think reflects the reality of what those jobs do and what the people who want to do them, what their expectations are, I think, personally. This leans into saying not a real job, and I don't think that's true in the sense that I think anything you can do that makes money is a real job. But when you're talking about something where everybody wants to do it because it's fun, and because of that there are millions and millions of people willing to do it for no money, supply outweighs demand for employees so much that it's not a morally defensible trait to demand that job be protected if that job is of trivial importance, I think. John says, would I be wary of the reputation of the place you're doing the work for and what effect that has on your work? Yeah, no, I agree, but I think... I guess my question is... No, so here's my point I'm making in the specific area of games journalism. Why did I come all the way down here? This is a strange thing. John says, but that's all arbitrary. No, I agree. I completely agree. I completely agree that it is arbitrary. And to an extent, it's always going to be arbitrary, and it runs into questions like, at what point is a coal mine arbitrary, and do coal miners deserve unions and things like that? But I guess it's easier for me to take this position because... do you know what? I'll say something somewhat controversial, but I hope I can bring it round to a good point, while freely admitting that we're not at this point yet. Hello to Pepper Pepper. Which is, I would have absolutely no problem with a legal situation where people can hire and fire at will. At will employment and all that jazz and all the crap that comes with it. If we were living in a society where people had adequate protections in other places, right? So for me, it's very easy to say, I don't have a problem with an employer saying, you just have no use for me in this business anymore, I should be able to fire you, right? I don't have a problem with that if we're living in a society with, say, universal basic income, right? This is my thing here. This is where I'm going with this. The problem, I think, with journalism and with games journalism, things like this, and with people taking fault with unpaid work is, how do you handle a situation where you have a job that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people want to do, and supply far outstrips demand, right? And lots of people want to get into it, and lots of outlets want to start, and there's, you know what I mean? What do you do? Because what you have here is a job that isn't worth money. Now, I hate to go all free market on it, because those people are all terrible. And people always come back to this with the case of, well, if it isn't worth the money, then you don't need the writer, and you shouldn't have to pay them. But that's not where the thing comes from. It's the supply far outstrips demand. My thing is, this problem here is a problem that isn't solved by demanding outlets pay their staff. It's a problem that's solved by recognizing that paying everybody is ultimately impossible. You know what I mean? Like, this is the great problem the world's in, right? This is the fundamental problem of society. There are no longer enough jobs to go around as much as we try and pretend there are. I mean, there are in certain places, but not really. All the old jobs are disappearing. All the new jobs that are being created aren't enough, and eventually everything's going to be automated, right? Then are we going to demand that we pay people for things that aren't worth money? You know what I mean? It's not viable. The viable solution is universal basic income and let people work for free on video game websites because they want to, right? That's the only long-term solution to this problem. But yeah, I don't really. My thing is, I don't really have a problem with people working for free in what I would consider to be non-essential jobs. Personally, and I don't think this is a huge moral failing, like some people seem to. I think there are jobs that you do because they're important and they need doing. And there are jobs that you do because they're highly skilled and only you can do them. And then there are a small amount of jobs that you do because they're fun and you manage to get them. And the truth is, I don't think we can hire everybody for the fun ones that wants to be hired. That's the reality of it. And so you have to set yourself apart, and the way you set yourself apart is going to be by doing work for free to fill your portfolio out. And I don't think that's a solvable issue. It's not going to be a solvable issue as long as so many people would like to be video game journalists more than the positions available. And so many people would like to write about movies more than the positions available. It's not a solvable problem unless you ban working for free, right? In which case, those positions will just dry up anyway. They'll just cease to exist. And I don't think this is comparable to the minimum wage argument. Because my thing is that ultimately the problem here isn't solved by demanding that companies hire someone when they're being drowned in people who will do it for free or nothing. Almost nothing. I just don't see that that's a solution. I don't see that it's a solution without saying it is illegal to hire someone for free. Like, it is illegal to ask someone to do something for free. And if you make it illegal, it'll just become an informal arrangement, right? I don't know. I don't see that there is an answer there. And I don't see that it's a moral question for certain jobs. That's my issue with it. It just doesn't seem to be... it doesn't seem to be a rights issue to me. Not in that sense. Pepper Bear says, "Are you on Bedrock?" Yes, I am. John says, "But that's suggesting that everyone who wants to be something can be something in any field." No, not really. No, I don't think so. So, for me, the question is, for me, the question is, are you entitled to be paid for something that has low demand? And if that's the case, what's the mechanism by which you judge what that is, right? There are so many people that would like to be video game journalists that outlets can get away with asking people to do it for free, and that's not going to go away. It's never going to go away. What's the solution? Because if you it's easy for me, really, because my position is that everybody should be paid for being a human being who needs to eat, right? So it's easy for me to have a I don't think my answer is contradictory to that. I think my answer is complementary to that, which is, in a world of universal basic income, nobody's paid for games journalism. right? Everybody just does it if they want to. And if you really set yourself apart, you might find yourself in a a paid position for it. But the question for me is, if this is the system we're in, right? If this is the society we're in, what do you do with a job where supply far outweighs demand? How do you handle that economically and morally? Because I don't know. I don't think the answer is as cut and dry as you should always pay people. You should never ever consider taking on someone unpaid when you have so many opportunities. It's not viable, right? It's not possible to hire them all, so you're always going to be denying some. It's not possible to I don't know. To me, I think it's not an inherently immoral thing to have someone who's trying to break into a field work unpaid. That's certain fields and certain types of work as well. John says, see, the problem is that if there's so many who are willing to do things for free, that means the benefit you get to your portfolio is meaningless because everyone has that sort of work there. I mean, that too, but that's a... but that's... do you know what? I'm just gonna say it. That's the problem when you're talking about a job that doesn't meet the traditional definitions of work and isn't of enough value to benefit from those protections. That's the issue here, to me. Enthusiast press, let's say. Because I think journalism has a real good benefit, like proper mainstream political journalism and news, right? Very crucially important. But enthusiast press, it's a luxury product. It's usually a... luxury products. I'm not a fan of people who say that we shouldn't criticize... Nobody should get to talk about buy video games because they're a luxury and things like that. Like, I don't mean it like that. But it's a triviality, I think. A pleasant triviality. A likable, enjoyable triviality. But it is, I think, a triviality, right? I think video game reviews are not... they're not labor in many ways. That's better. John says, why add a value to anything, though? Why not simply, did you do work, you get compensated? Because that's not tenable for certain kinds of work, right? It's not sustainable, it's not practical. And certain types of business, right? I think. And sometimes you can say, well, you shouldn't be in business then, right? And I completely support that, right? I think the one type of argument that goes, well, if you can't pay your staff, you can't afford to be in business, right? Is totally appropriate for certain types of work. I don't think writing is one of them. I should rephrase that. So, I'm trying to phrase a complicated concept and look at the the measure of the distance here too. Okay. So I think where does that join? Two down from there. I think creative work. So there's I would say you can break creative work into two types, right? There's creative work that you choose to do for yourself. You might want to do it as a business, but it's creative work you choose to do for yourself. And there's creative work that you do for others, right? Now, creative work that you choose to do for yourself, you can't demand compensation for, right? If I go and I decide tomorrow that I'm going to be a watercolor painter, then I can't demand people buy my paintings. I think that's a reasonably appropriate thing, right? And that's simply because I haven't made a contract with anybody. You don't get to choose what you tell other people to buy. The other kind of creative work is creative work that you... Oh man, I don't know how this is going to join here. I think this is going to be kind of awkward. But the kind of creative work we're talking about here is essentially work for hire, right? Now, if you make an agreement with somebody and they say they're going to pay you and they don't pay you, I think that's wrong. Obviously. Because you've defrauded a person. I just don't think it's inherently wrong to say, I have some work that needs doing in this area, but I can't afford to pay for it right now. But if you want to do it for free and take the thing, you can. I don't have an inherent problem with that. When we're talking about where we're talking about a role where supply far outstrips demand. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, personally. Or at least, I don't think there's anything more exploitative about that than putting people in a position where they have to do it for money, I guess is a better way of putting it. Because for me, I can take the well, people need to eat out of the equation because I think we should be paying for people to eat anyway. But also, if you're at the position where you're doing certain kinds of work, you're also probably not at that level of risk, I think. John says, well, I mean, working out the morality of this is impossible. I'm just saying that from the creator side, there's no benefit in doing free work for others. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true that there's no benefit. That's my thing. I don't think that there's any truth to the idea that there is inherently no benefit to, say, an unpaid internship. I just don't. Particularly if we're talking about a job where supply is so far outstripping demand that experience is likely to aid in securing a job elsewhere. Which in a lot of these creative fields it is, I think. I mean, quite simply, like that job I was talking about, that job was unpaid. If I'd applied for a job at Kotaku, let's say, I probably wouldn't have gotten it. If I'd taken the unpaid job and done it for 2 years, I probably would have had a better chance at a paying outlet. that is value if you have a job you need to go for. And if you're talking about a job that's incredibly hard to break into because it's so oversubscribed, it's so oversaturated with candidates. John says, but an unpaid internship is not the same as being an unpaid artist or creator. But it's fundamentally the thing I've been talking about the whole way through. Taking an unpaid job. But what's so different about an unpaid internship if you're in a creative field? If it's a journalistic internship? I don't think it's substantively different. Assuming that the stakes are the same on the other side, it has the same value in hiring, it has the same likelihood to increase your portfolio or your CV. Tiny Betsicker says, I guess a good comparison could be sports. Most kids play a sport at school. Some of them are good, some aren't. The ones that make any money from it, though, are very few and far between. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's... maybe. No, I don't think that's a bad analogy at all. Like, it's not... It's... If you take value from playing in an amateur league, and you want to see if you can use it as a path to professional, very few people succeed. But the amateur league isn't exploiting you if it serves your goals. If you're in a situation where your ends are being met, which is your personal improvement and development practice and getting your name out there, it's not inherently exploitative any more so than any other form of labor. Okay, I'm doing really badly at kind of figuring out. Oh no, I know. What if I just go onto that layer and just go from there? Because it starts one block above that. I can do that. Having like a tricky job just seeing where it needs to start. Okay, one block above there. So we're going on this corner. How does that compare to the other side then? Is it one block below? It is! Okay, so if we just make sure we fill that in there. Tiny Biscuit says, right, if you like creating stuff, the value is in the enjoyment you get, not just if you get paid. See, I think that's true for more general art. I think if you are trying to go professionally... I mean, I'm not talking about situations where you... Okay, I'm going to have to fill this in. John says, an unpaid internship is gaining seniority with a specific organization and obtaining non-nebulous skills that can be transferred to another organization. Sure, but if you're in creative work, your skills and experience are likely to be nebulous. So that's going to be your equivalent. Or often they're going to be nebulous. Okay, this is going to be a bit weird. John says, also with an internship, it suggests there is some sort of mentorship as well. If you're simply just doing work, that's not the same. Okay, hold on. So 1 up, and then 2 up. And then 3. 1, 2, 3. And then 2, then 1. No, okay, hold on. This is so hard to replicate on a diagonal. One, and then 2. And then 3, kind of. Maybe this would be easier if I straightened this out, so that it didn't have this odd curve to it. So. No, that's going to be that, because that's the shape of the basic booster. So, 2, 2, 2, 2. Let's try that. Hello to Cutplay Gaming, how you doing? Tiny Berserker says, I wonder if there's a perception difference because the US-UK approaches to internships. We didn't even call them internships unless they were paid a few years ago. I did a few work experience placements, which would now be called internships. Maybe. I don't know. See, my thing here is, I think there's a difference here between maybe a certain definition of internship. But I think the question for me is more a question of value. Which is, if... this is... Let's start from scratch here. Sorry, I'm trying to have this conversation and build a rocket at the same time, and it's occasionally taxing my ability to think of two things at once. Is there value in doing unpaid work? I think it's actually because of the change in shape on the corner of the rocket. Is there inherent... Okay, hold on, let me go look at this other side of the rocket so I can get it right. Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, so 2. This is not going to work. but it might give us a sort of starting point. How many steps did this other one have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No chance in hell that's going to go to 5, and it's because this next one counts as well. So 1, 2, that counts. Which means the next one should be 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, okay. Let me just skip the 9, and we'll count this. Oh, I forgot about the creeper. Leave me alone. Ah! It's incredibly annoying. Fortunately, I think that was the... Yeah, that was the one we're getting rid of. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, that fits beautifully. And that should be the bottom. So this is actually, it's worked out to be one of the most complicated diagonals I have ever produced in Minecraft. One of the most complicated diagonal structures. But hopefully from a distance it's going to look okay. Okay, no, that's pretty good. Might fill in that gap, but now let's take a little zip further afield. Okay, no, that's fine. I think that's... Oh, wait, no, it's too low, isn't it? Maybe we need to tweak the top. Too low on the top. So how have we ended up there? Is that because we've miscounted on that side, maybe? It is. Okay, we made the same miscalculation there. So let's just go correct that. It's clearly a lot closer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So why isn't that coming in at the same height as that? Or is it and it just doesn't look like it is? Oh, this is a pretty easy way to tell, actually. Let's just... Sorry, I know we're having a lovely talk about whether or not you should do unpaid work or not, but I've been completely sidetracked by getting this rocket right. I think there are good points. I think one of the difficulties, of course, is when you say, I don't think it's always immoral to do unpaid work. Although, of course, there's always the question of whether it's work. One of the concerns, and I think it's a good concern, is that this opens the door for people who want to exploit people. But I think it's a reasonable concern. But I think it doesn't deal with the issue as I see it, which is sometimes value isn't monetary. And I think experience and credits can be of value. Without evoking the dreaded for exposure. Okay, so there should be one last step here. And we don't seem to be creating one. So what if I went down the way and created that parallel? Great. There's actually a problem here, isn't there? That leads up to a perfectly straight edge there. But this side isn't built like that. I put this in. That's the problem. I put this smooth edge in. To make it line up more correctly with this here. But this here isn't parallel to that. It's not directly comparable. Okay, how does that look now? Yeah, no, that looks like a better fit. It's still not perfect. I'd say what I'd like to see, actually. A view from the top. Let's go all the way up and look down. I don't think this is going to work. I think we're going to be too far. I mean, I could kind of... Oh, God. Yeah, okay, you can't see anything from here. Down we go. You know what? I think that's okay. We just got to put the other booster with the support on. They're still a little small, but I think it's better than it was. Alright guys, I think that is probably a good time for me to finish up now. I hope you had a good stream. I appreciate you being here. I will see you guys all next time. You're all very, very awesome. I'll be doing a Mass Effect stream later today. I appreciate you being here. As always, I will see you guys all tomorrow, if not today, for more Minecraft. Thank you so much, whoever just hit that subscribe button. I'll see your name pop up in a second. Welcome to the Addams family. Click, click, and so on and so forth. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you all later. Ta-ta for now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. So on and so forth.